Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of New Album Spotlight, the show where I put the spotlight on a new album that I've been enjoying in the world of progressive rock or related genres. Something I want to bring your attention towards. Oftentimes, a band that I don't think gets enough attention and deserves a spotlight, deserves people to go out and check out their new album. And that's certainly the case today. This is a band that I definitely don't hear enough about in the prog circles that I am around. But I think there's a sweet spot from a lot of people who love them. The band's called Dim Gray, and the album is called Shards. This is the third album from the band. This is a band from Norway, so their third studio album. Really what brought my attention to them was their previous album, Firmament, which I really loved, came out in 2022. And they're just a fantastic group. Maybe not full-blown progressive rock, and maybe that's why a lot of progressive rock circles don't pick up on them quite as much as other groups. But they have prog touches and prog flourishes, and they have this adventurous nature in their music. There's this really full soundscape. They have this kind of folky, mystical kind of quality to their music. It feels like it's from another land, from another time, and it's just so beautifully performed and has so many great qualities to it that has just really touched my heart. And really, when thinking about bands that this sounds like, they have a very signature kind of unique sound, but I'm drawn to them the same way I'm drawn to Mir, who I've talked up on the channel quite a bit. They had my favorite album of last year, Wheels Within Wheels. And I really love this kind of an aesthetic where it's a bit of a pop-leaning group. They have these catchy melodies and things that grab your ears immediately, that bring you back, that just are really great hooks. But they add an adventurous, proggy spirit that makes it a bit more exciting and fresh and more interesting as a listener than just your standard pop or folk album. You know, they add these little twists and turns, these orchestrated elements, this really dramatic sound, these epic sweeping sections, and exploration into different musical territory that make it much more special to me as a listener. So I'm drawn in by those hooks, by that great sumptuous melody that brings me into this music and catches my ear off the bat. But then I continue in this journey because of all these great soundscapes, because of all these adventurous explorations that they're willing to take. You know, it's the perfect balance to me because oftentimes people can say about prog music that it takes a while to really get into it. You know, you have to listen to the album several times to really unpack and understand all the complexities and what they're going for. So it may not hit you upon first listen, but it's something that develops over time. But because they have this accessibility and this pop sensibility in their melody writing and in some of the vocal hooks that they have, it draws you in immediately. Also, you know, you don't have to wait for things to unpack and uncover themselves. You get an immediate hit of adrenaline and a rush of enjoyment right off the bat when you first listen to these songs, but then there's also layers to uncover and hidden things that you can continue to find as you continue to listen to the album. So it's a great balance, and it brings two sides of music that I love into one beautiful whole that just really is an enriching listening experience. The band here that we have, Haken Hoiberg on guitar and vocals, Tom Ian Klugland on drums, and Oscar Holdorf on vocals and keys. We also see some added members here, Christian Kavarskrud on bass and Milad Amuzegar on guitars and keys. So very strong lineup of the group. They bring a lot as a collective. There's kind of two vocalists here in a lot of ways. Really the primary vocalist is Oscar Holdorf, who I'm familiar with, who's also been a big part of Big Big Train lately. He's joined their fold. But he does most of the sumptuous, beautiful vocal melodies here. But we also get some vocals from Hoiberg as well, which have a bit more of this kind of quavery, kind of unique tone to them that come up on a couple of different tracks, such as Murals and also Peril, which has a bit of a dual vocal flavor to it. So really excellent. I love bands that have multiple vocalists that are able to harmonize with each other and give a lot of added depth and emotional weight to the vocal performances. So that's really something that I adore about the album as well. And this album blurs the lines between a bit of chamber pop, some progressive rock flourishes, some atmospheric folk, and it just blends to perform this like otherworldly sound that just really draws me in and feels special and unique and interesting. I love how they kind of balance these more quiet, folk tinged pop moments with these bigger, more sweeping, grand orchestral flourishes and these proggy instrumental builds. Most of the tracks beyond the final track are fairly short songs. You know, they stay in like the 3 to 4 minute mark and don't overstay their welcome. Maybe some of them I wish could be a bit more expanded and proggier just because of my personal tastes and preference. But I think it's really a strength of the album that it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's 40 minutes long or so. So it just gives you that perfect punch that you're looking for and allows you to really delve into this world for a specific amount of time without overwhelming you. It's a great little ride, and I think it just works perfectly for this music. And all the tracks have something unique on display. The band kind of talks too in their press release about having this blend of folk influences and forward-thinking aesthetic, evoking a blend of Radiohead's experimental edge with Fleet Fox's pastoral warmth. I thought that was a really apt description of what you can expect here and why it works so well with kind of this prog and pop mentality that I keep exploring and mentioning, and how I believe they sound a lot like Mir in that way, where they have this kind of experimental quality to them that brings a prog edge, but they also have that pastoral warmth, that folky quality that draws you in and just sounds pleasant and pleasing, and this pastoral nature, not unlike what Fleet Foxes can do at their best. So, fantastic blend of music. Defiance starts the record with a great example of this sound, some light atmospheric folky touches, some fluid guitar lines, and some power in the vocal performance. It's just a really great statement to get you into the record. Myopia is an early album highlight, some beautiful piano and almost electronica elements as Oscar's beautiful vocal comes in. Feels otherworldly. I love how they add some female vocals to this mix from Norwegian vocalist Varen. A beautiful piece of art. There's some great cello in the mix as well that guests on here, giving it more emotion and depth to this piece. Definitely a standout and one to check out if you're looking to sample the record. Murals has a more upbeat flavor, almost a Celtic vibe to it. Has those quavery lead vocals that I mentioned from Hoiberg. Fantastic quality. Gives it kind of that European flavor, maybe kind of an Irish or Celtic sort of aesthetic to it. Fun romp of a track full of depth and texture. It still fits in their framework, even if it's a slight more upbeat sound from their previous song on the record. Feathers gives a more plaintive vocal, some watery guitar lines, some atmospheric texture, some really sumptuous strings come to the make, some soaring vocal melodies bring an added level of beauty. It's dreamy and atmospheric, and it lifts you up to kind of this higher plane of listening, and the instrumental swells are among some of my favorite moments of the record. It's just beautifully realized and a wonderful track to listen to. Moon Eater kind of continues along this vein, a gorgeous piano ballad, great sumptuous vocal harmonies, and just otherworldly beauty once again. Has a short, almost darker edged proggy musical build toward the end that gives it a bit more of intensity and power. Maybe a bit too criminally short for this prog-minded individual, but beautiful nonetheless, and gives a cool little proggy flourish onto this track. Peril is a bit of a poppier track with some pounding drums and expressive guitar lines before we get back to those soaring vocals once again. And as I mentioned, it has that kind of dual vocal nature to it, giving beautiful different textures to the sound, but they blend fantastically well. Love the main guitar progression, which really hooks you into this track. So it's one of the more immediately accessible tracks that anyone can really grab hold of. I think it was the early single from the record, and makes sense that it was. Little One brings a bit more of a cool kind of proggy undertone to it. Starts a little bit more subdued before it opens up into a bigger sound with a really cool driving drum pattern. There's a big orchestral moment in the middle with beautiful classically tinged piano lines, giving a sense of power and majesty to this sound. And then it gets like really whisper quiet with just delicate vocals and minimal piano before it builds back up in a really fantastic way. Just a sublime track, one of the best on the record as well. As you can tell, I think the record is just full of highlights. Every track has its own highlights. Shards from a Broken Crown is really more of an introductory track, getting you into the semi-epic here on the record, the one longer track, at Sakula. Definitely you can feel that Fleet Foxes influence at the beginning with a bit of an indie folk flavor, some sublime vocal harmonies, before we get back to this powerful build with great orchestral flourishes and folk flavors, leading to a sumptuous, very understated guitar solo with shades of like a Steve Howe style aesthetic. Strips down once again to like fragile vocals and acoustic guitar before a gorgeous piano starts with orchestral atmosphere and gorgeous vocal harmonies, building this to epic new heights as it continues and builds along. I love how the track morphs and weaves, but never feels disjointed and keeps this kind of magical, mystical feeling of wonder and beauty as it continues along. And there's just some achingly beautiful string work, some great expressive piano bits, great build-ups and great singing and great everything as it comes to its epic conclusion. It's just all you could want and more in this style of an album, and puts this clearly in the makes for one of my favorite albums of the year, one of the most beautiful records that I've heard so far this year, and I heavily recommend it, especially if you, like me, were enchanted by Mir's latest album. I think this is along a similar line. And it's exciting to find a young band who's still fresh and still working out their material and still coming into their own. And this album, for me, is really a big stepping stone towards what this band can truly accomplish. I think this puts them on another level, and I really hope people out there will hear this because it's gorgeous and it deserves to be heard. It may not be full-blown prog like you might expect from a lot of my recommendations. The prog moments are a little more subtle and few and far between, but I'm just looking for good quality music that just speaks to my heart and has a sense of beauty and wonder and has this kind of otherworldly quality that draws me in, that doesn't sound like any other current band on the scene. And that's what this does for me, similar to what Mir does for me. And I can't recommend it enough. It just really soars and is beautiful, uplifting, positive music to just bring a lot of joy into my heart as they explore these kind of different themes and more mature topics. I really love it. I think it's a brilliant record and hope you guys will check it out as well. So thank you guys for watching this review. I hope you guys appreciated my thoughts here. If you've heard the record, or if you watch this review once the record's out, please let me know your thoughts as well, or your anticipation of this record. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, I'd be really interested to hear. Check out the singles. There's several singles you can find on streaming services or on YouTube or whatever that really give you a sense of the feeling of this record, that can probably tell you if this is something for you or not. So thank you guys so much, and hopefully you guys will have a great time out there enjoying your music, whatever you're listening to, and I'll catch you in a future episode. Bye, everybody.